Hello and welcome to Mead in the USA. I am the Heathen Chips and this is my associate Mr. Gray, and here we will begin our experiment. Mead is a simple alcoholic beverage comprised of honey, water, and alcohol produced by yeast in a fermentation process with an average ABV of about 7 to 14%.
In this show, we want to explore the different subtle flavors of wildflower honey from local farms across the nation. What we want to know is, 1, what is the base flavors and or smells that can be expected from this honey? Are they unique or are they potent enough to come off in the mead? Does the local raw, unheated organic honey taste better than the normal commercial honey you can buy at the store? Or is the price worth the flavor differences, or is there enough of a difference to even notice?
To test this, Mr. Gray will be making his first mead today. This will be our control mead. It's going to be a 3-gallon to ensure that we have enough throughout the season for tasting. The next 50 meads will be 1 gallons, made with raw wildflower honey from a local bee farm from each state. We'll take a close look at the consistency, the color, report the smells, and the flavors from a novice perspective.
We will then let our mead ferment for about a month. We're going to stop it at about 10% out of about 14% that the yeast would produce. Right. We'll give our first impression on this as a control mead and then later have a tasting to see if any group stands out.
This being our first video, we're going to make a little more detailed tutorial. So for folks who have made mead before, feel free to hit the timestamps and jump straight to the tasting comparison.
So we decided to go with the honey brand that can be found in almost every state in the US, and it's close to the most affordable.
Introducing Great Value Clover Honey, costing $4.58 for 16 ounces, or about 28.6 cents per ounce. Now I know I've been going on about wildflower honey, but to be fair, some states only have clover honey available. That in mind, with the value and availability, it's seemingly a perfect start for beginners.
I'm sorry, I laughed.
Let's check the water content of the honey to verify its quality. To do this, we'll use a refractometer. And this is in no way necessary, but worth noting. This is to see if the honey has been diluted. An ideal honey is about 17.8%. All you have to do, once you have the device, is to put a little layer of honey on it, cover the entire blue area here, and you must have a solid light coming in at it to see properly. Now let's get started with a few things that we'll need. Sanitizer, we'll be using Star San, a carboy, fermentation bucket, jug, empty juice carton, or any other like vessel. A secondary vessel will be needed in the future. An airlock and bung, or a plug with a hole. There are several sizes of plugs and bungs, so be sure to use the correct diameter. An auto siphon and rubber tube. This will help us to move the mead from one vessel to another in a process called racking. And neither the secondary vessel nor the auto siphon and hose are required to start the fermentation. Once we start the primary fermentation, yeast are going to consume fermentable sugars in the must, a phrase used for a mixture of honey and water. As the yeast eat the sugar, they will make alcohol, CO2, and a few other byproducts. As the pressure builds, it will force excess CO2 out through the water in the airlock. Racking will help with the clarity of the mead as it removes the bottom sediment. We'll need a hydrometer and a 250 milliliter cylinder to test for ABV. We will also need a stick and a thief. And this is our refractometer. It's used to test the water content of a honey. Mr. Gray, you may begin to sterilize your equipment.
All right.
Okay, we're going to start with the sanitizing. We're going to use a spray bottle. Go ahead and undo it. Go ahead, undo it.
Spray it on.
We're going to be using the spray bottle, obviously. 1/2 ounce of Star San will sanitize up to about 5 gallons worth of water for all of your equipment. But you can just go ahead and put a little splash of that in the water bottle, add the rest with water, and you get a lot more bang for your buck. After we fill this up a bit, we're going to put the Star San, or leave the Star San sit for at least 2 minutes, and then we're going to go ahead and rinse out with our spring water. All right, I think that should be good. Yeah, and that's what I do. I just keep it tumbling around. All right, should be good. Sanitize the hell out of it. All right, now we're going to rinse out with a little bit of our spring water after we drain it.
Do you want a funnel?
I want the sink. But a funnel would be a good idea. Now for the ingredients. Our traditional mead recipe will be 1 gallon of spring water to 3 pounds of honey and 1 packet of Lalvin B 71, 1 packet of Lalvin 71B and 1 tablespoon of nutrients. This being a 3-gallon mead, we're going to triple the recipe, and with the exception of the yeast, because it is made for, the packet is good for up to about 5 to 6 gallons worth of mead. We're going to aim for about 10% ABV. This way we won't back sweeten much, if at all, and the flavors will tend to meld and mature better together. Before we start, we should rehydrate our yeast. You don't have to, you can sprinkle in and mix straight into the must, but this will give them an easier start. You just have to add 2 ounces of warm water, somewhere around 95 to 98 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius, and sprinkle on, stir, and leave until we need it. All right, 1 packet to warm water.
And now, the water.
And now, the honey.
Drizzle, drizzle. Get it. Take all that honey, that sweet thing.
Make my pain go bye-bye. I think we can go ahead, so pull that up now.
Next. Sweet, delicious. Let go.
Now the trick is to get every last ounce out. We're going to add a little bit more spring water to our emptier bottles to get the last tiny bit. Why? Just take the top.
Because I can, damn it.
Because I like the sound of it.
Because we're having fun with it now. So how much more? We got more water then?
Nope, we're good. Well, we're good right now. Okay, so
Okay.
now we're going to shake or stir the must. Now you can just go ahead and shake it, but there are tools to make that a little more fun. Enjoy.
All right. So this is before we add the yeast?
Nope. Oh yes, this is right now.
Okay.
We're going to mix this up. It is going to be our must, and then we will add our yeast. Oh, you might want to keep that for one. Pull it up. I was going to say, that might be a little OP to start with. That was fun there, are we?
Hello.
What do you do when you're bored? Not making alcohol after. Alright, Satisfied, Mr. Gray?
Looks like pretty good airy mead to me.
Something to note during this process is that the yeast need oxygen in the must, but not on the must. We want to get it in the must so that the yeast have the nutrient to work with to produce the alcohol. But if we leave too much headspace up here, the oxygen will, any potential oxygen that gets in when you go to test with the hydrometer, it might draw the flavors and make them dull, more cardboard-like. Now we have a recipe, but we also have a target ABV. Not all honeys are created equal. Some honey, so to hit 14%, it might be a little bit different each time. So we're going to test our gravity with our ABV. We're going to do this with a thief. You don't have to, you can simply pour out a bit into the cylinder. But if you have the means for it, it does make it a lot easier.
That honey water?
And that airy honey water, man. That does it for me. It just had some alcohol in it now. So we're hitting at about 17% alcohol right now. To go ahead and dial it on back, dilute it a bit, fill it up with the rest with the spring water. Take another gravity test.
Alright. You trying to dump that back in there first?
I was gonna say.
Yeah, you got a little lip back.
Got a funnel.
No,
Anti-funnel, I get it. Just saying.
the funnel's there for show to make it look like we're professionals.
Yeah.
Okay, that looks good. A bit better, a little bit closer to what we're looking for.
So we'll end up with 15% possible starting gravity, and we'll cap it out at somewhere around 10 to 11%, depending on how sweet or unsweetened it ends up being. Yeah.
And now we pour in the yeast.
All right.
Yeast.
And we're gonna put our bung in the top of the
You got the
carboy.
rest of that shit over here. You got the must in over here.
Oh, no, that's for a test. Bung in our carboy. Some vodka in our airlock. Okay. Put the cap up. And we're done. Congratulations, Mr. Gray. You're officially 1/3 of the way to being a mead maker. How do you feel?
Tired. Is that? Well, I don't know what the hell that is. Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. I could use a drink. I had two lines that were actually mine, and I've messed them both up.
All right, let's give our must a taste and see what we have. All right, always save your test for a taste. Cheers. Yep, that's definitely honey.
That's some sugary water.
Definitely very thick.
I don't know if I want another drink. That was really sweet.
It's definitely, yeah, it is. It is way overpoweringly sweet. I mean, you kind of expect it, but it is a typical store-bought, store-brand honey flavor. It's dependable. It's, you know, you could smell it a mile away. Nothing too discerning on it. Just very thick, but that is a sack mead for you. Anything that's, I think it's anything that's over 14% is a sack mead, which is just real high gravity, really sweet. But I think that's how mead's supposed to be, a bit on the sweeter side and a higher ABV. So, I guess that's it for now. We'll be back when the mead is ready.
All right. See you next time.
So,
here we are 6 weeks later. The mead has brewed, has finished fermenting. We got to about 10% alcohol in the hydrometer, that's what we were aiming for. So what we're going to do is we're going to re-rack it now into another bottle, and then we're going to add in some stabilizers to stop the brewing process so it doesn't get any more alcoholic.
So what we're going to do is put an auto siphon through here, which we've seen before, through with the hose into our secondary vessel. And we're going to leave the bottom sediment alone. It's going to stay in here. The rest of it will move over. It'll clear up a little bit in doing so. And then the stabilizer will help knock more a little bit out through time. And then in about another month or so, we'll rack it over, and that pretty much will be the last of the process, and it'll sit in there for a long-term storage throughout the series. So let's get to it.
All right.
When you're playing around with the gravity portion of this, you want to have your empty vessel further down so that the gravity can siphon or pull the liquid through. Did we sanitize? We did not sanitize this first.
Always make sure to sanitize your equipment.
Good job. Make sure we got all of our accreditations in here, like we know what we're doing. Like we watched somebody else do this a million times, we fumbled through it once ourselves. Goddamn disgrace. So very carefully bring it on down a bit after we plug this in.
That was the part that I felt like we were missing.
Move our hose to the bottom here so that we get as little turbulence as possible. So now slowly coming down. All the way real slow at the bottom. You don't want to, go ahead, let go. We don't want to disturb any more sediment than need be. And then we're just gonna pump it on through.
I was gonna have to keep. Oh, I want to say.
It's an auto.
That was like, it looked like you had it kept going. But yeah.
And that's pretty much it. Now we're gonna stand here and look pretty for about another 20 minutes.
Oh yeah. You usually find a box, so you don't have to sit here and hold it.
Yeah, that might be an idea. Or you usually drop your vessel a bit further down, like all the way to the ground.
No, that's you thinking too much.
Not up on a chair for show.
For science.
And if you want to leave a little bit extra, it's going to be a little bit of loss, but it's better than getting all that sediment in, especially with the first racking, I feel. Okay, so now we're all racked up into our new vessel, and the last thing that we're going to have to do is add in our stabilizers, some sorbate K and potassium metabisulfite. Roughly about half a teaspoon for a gallon, so we're going to have 1/2 of each, just kind of ground up in a fine little white powder. And we finish off with a quick stir. Doesn't need terribly much.
No power this time?
No.
This is our long-term storage vessel, so we'll be leaving it in here, so any more sediment that can settle, we'll be re-racking it once more again, but we're going to do a taste test of what it tastes like now. We already have some pulled off to the side.
All right, cheers. Still smells about the same as it did, just a little bit weaker. Still a little yeasty though.
Still a little yeasty. It's not quite as like when we tasted the mash. That's what it's called before, right?
The must.
Must. When we tasted the must before, it was sickeningly sweet because it was just honey and water. But now that the yeast has been able to eat through some of that honey and that sweetness, you can still taste the honey flavor, but it is not nearly as sickeningly sweet.
Yeah, it was just kind of like, it was almost like just drinking straight up honey, but just liquid. I mean, that's pretty much what we did, but it was like it tasted, it still comes off a little artificially honey flavored. Like the flavor is almost too honey-ish.
I agree there. This one definitely, you get that almost artificial flavoring honey rather than what you would expect it should taste like.
I do really like that that slight champagne-y taste that we're still getting though through the 71B yeast. That is, it gives it a little bit of a refreshing bit at the end. Not something I'd eat with a steak, but if you were desperate enough.
Well, I would think for people who would enjoy wine would actually like this a lot more than your more stronger. If we let this brew a lot longer.
Oh yeah, if we let this get up to like the ferment completely out at and make be a solid 15%. I don't know.
You would taste the alcohol more on this one and get the burn, but I would think people who enjoy like either something more lighter or like a wine with dinner might like this more.
Yeah. That's something I like to think that the traditional mead should be used for, with the ideal standard that it's kind of more like a texture breakup. You know, it's a flavor or palate cleanser, something of the sort.
It doesn't smell too alcoholic. You can smell a little bit of alcohol when you take a breath, but it's not overpowering like you're using rubbing alcohol or anything.
It kind of reminds me of like a juicy juice version of honey water. That's what it's kind of like got a Welch's kind of
alcohol for kids.
like that end flavor there. It's kind of like drinking Welch's grape juice, ever so slightly, without any of the flavor, just the texture and the level, like the potency to that yeast, to that champagne yeast. That's very interesting.
I can see what you're saying, but I contribute that to be more like the champagne yeast flavor you were referring to earlier rather than referring to Welch's grape juice.
But otherwise, it is a very clean flavor. It's like generic honey all the way through almost, up until you hit the middle to the end of the taste.
So this is going to be the stage we're going to taste all the meads at. You can obviously let this sit a lot longer, and then you get a lot more. It would be more clarity, it'd be clear, more sediment will settle. The flavors may still change, but this is going to be when we're going to try to get and notice any differences between the honeys we try. Well, till next time.
Yep. All right, so now it's been several months and their great value honey has had some time to mature and meld in together. So we're going to give one final taste test for this episode. And
say one thing, just looking at it, you can tell that it's definitely like whatever the alcohol is in has eaten away at most of the color. It's much more see-through than I believe it was when we initially did the test before.
Yeah.
That might be me remembering wrong. That's what I recall. So let's give it a taste.
Much more refreshing than it was.
I was going to give a comment there, but then I started getting the aftertaste in the back, and I wanted to experience that before I gave a comment. It's not as sweet as it was before. It seems like it's melded with whatever sugar's left there into it, so you're not getting the sweetness hit that you did before.
Yeah.
And I'm also not tasting the champagne flavor, like the yeasty flavor we had from it initially, because now that's had time to settle out and pretty much mix throughout it.
It's almost got a little bit of a more kind of like a light fruity kind of note. Nothing in particular, but it's a much lighter flavor than it was. A little bit of that clover. A little bit of that clover is still kind of in the background, tucked in.
As far as the fruity thing, I think that's been there. If anything, I said it might have been hidden behind the champagne flavor before.
Yeah, that works out pretty well. But
overall, it's pretty good though. It's definitely drinkable, something you can give to people. For something you can buy at any store, it's definitely, this is the only thing you have available to you, it's not a horrible option to go with.
Not overly sweet. Like I said, refreshing. All right, well, good job.